We're starting. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for staying with us for day 2 of Best of EVO. And we're going to go on to our next session. And that is, if you can read that, you can go upside down, and flipped learning. The lead moderator is Diana, and flipped learning has been going on for a number of years. Gabriela and Mike are this year's moderators. There's a bit about Diana, who's coming to us from Colombia, and Gabriela, who's coming to us from Argentina, and Mike, who's based in Greece. So I'm going to stop screen sharing so you guys can start.
Okay,
I can see
you.
Gabriela in
Yes.
Hi there.
Welcome, Gabriela.
Hi, thank you. And Diana, are you there? Yes. There
Yes,
you are.
I see her. With a flipped background, but it's not flipped.
Yeah.
Next time, next year.
Besitos, Gabriela from Jujuy.
Wow. Hi. That's nice. So, Diana, are you going to share?
Yep, she's in the process. Just don't use Safari. If you're using Safari, move to Chrome.
Yes, I'm using Chrome.
Oh, good. Okay.
And the mic is not here yet.
Yeah, Mike is not cannot make it, but we are here.
Okay.
Okay. Well, this is the overview of our session. This is the 7th annual Flipped Learning in Language Teaching 23 session. And our first goal was to introduce the concept of flipped learning to participants along the modal pillars and the many ways in which you or us as a teacher can design a lesson, keeping in mind the many ways in which this can be accomplished. We delivered the course during 4 weeks, and it started back there in 2015. So, and we, the moderators this year, Diana from Colombia, Mike from Greece, and I from Argentina, have been moderating or co-moderating this session for 5 or 6 years, more or less. And well, if you come back to the previous slide, you can check this year course to enroll next year, and get to know what we are working during these 5 weeks in the following link. If then we can share it in the chat box, okay, to let them explore later. Thank you, Dee.
Thank you so much, Gabi. So as Gabi was saying, this is our 7th session. And what we have discovered is that whenever teachers enroll, they may have been flipping their class, but it is not flipping their whole teaching or flipping learning as such. So first, when teachers get in and then we start to ask them, what can be the meaning of flipped learning? All they can think about is, then schoolwork at home and homework at school. Some of them think that is way too much work for them, which is sometimes, if you are a first starter or a beginning in flipped learning, that can be the meaning of flipped learning for you, because it's not easy. We have discovered with Mike, Gabi, myself, and when you read articles, that flipped learning stands for a new way of thinking. It's not only about flipping 1 or 2 lessons, but also doing or keeping in mind a set of pillars in order for you to teach with your best teaching practices in flipped learning. So when we talk about flipped learning, we think it's not about the homework that we can do in class, but are those higher order thinking skills that you can accomplish in class with your students. So when we are flipping our teaching and flipping learning, we think ourselves as facilitators in the learning of our students. So sometimes we think about of flipped learning when we see ourselves in a whole collaborative environment, not only because our students group like or team up, but also because we work hand in hand with our students' needs and our students' necessities and our students' likes and dislikes. We know our classroom very good. Like we know each one of our students to understand what we could implement. That is not just about what motivates us as teachers, but how can our students be more invested in our classroom? And investment, as you may know, is a whole new concept, and it's not just about the psychological misconception that we may think about external and internal motivation, but it's a way in which our students can imagine themselves as learning a new language. So we also talk about classroom projects, shifting our mindsets. So we think about growing mindset, mindfulness, yeah. In our teaching day by day practice is our philosophy. So it's not just about implementing the model in one class. It's not only implementing technological tools in one class, but it's also a philosophy underlying it. So whenever I think about, I came across this article in 2006 by Christine John Graney and Elaine Marshall and Christine Xavier, in which they think about flipped learning as a basket full of treats. So we have collaborative learning, we have mindfulness, we have growth mindset, we have PBL, project-based learning, even problem-based learning as well, positive psychology, active learning, differentiated instruction. So as you can see, it is a basket full of other methodologies that somehow nurtures the whole methodology. And also, as Caro, one of our previous moderators, used to say, is a compassionate teaching methodology, because we get to know our students in depth. So some teachers may think that is too, it is a lot of work in terms that at the beginning of the course or the semester, depending whether or not you're a school teacher or you're a university teacher or professor, you need to get to know your students. Like you need to take time, and instead of covering the syllabus, you need to know them better in order to implement all of what you need in order for your class to accomplish those four pillars. So you have F4, Gabi. F4. You have four pillars, that means flip.
Yeah,
So
sorry.
You have F4.
Technical problems.
No worries. So the four pillars are, Gabi, help me out.
Four
here.
pillars, yes. Flexible environment, learning context or learning culture, intentional content, and professional educator.
So in the flexible environment, you want your students to be safe. This is the reason why we talk about growth mindset, because the way you treat your students is the way they're going to treat themselves as learners in your classroom. So this is the reason why Carolina talks about compassionate teaching methodology. You need to make your students feel safe within your environment. Learning culture is because, for example, in my case, where I teach at a private school at a university, and sometimes you feel the culture of the school in my country, for example, being focused towards the grade and not towards the learning. So even though your students are working for a grade, you need to make them feel that whatever you do in class with them is worth the risk of their learning and not only of their grade. So this is the reason why we talk about creating learning cultures where they feel they can have a choice in the learning. So we talk about choice words, differentiated instruction over here, classes where they can feel that they can work and collaborate with others, that their voice is being heard. intentional content, because as a facilitator, you are a curator of your own content. So we talk about digital packaging. We're going to talk about some about this later on. We talk about hyperdocs, like ways in which students can access the content of your learning. And this is very related to all of the sessions that we have previously seen, because this is very well related to them. It is very important the way in which you make students access the content of your learning. And of course, professional educator, because you're always working in networking within your school and outside your school. This is professional education for us. EVO, with all of the courses going on, we just don't talk about flipped learning, but other things that can nurture our flipped learning context. So for this year, we use Canvas infrastructure in order for our attendees to access the content of our course. We had in total many people from around the world, 24 from America, Peru, Argentina, the US, Canada, and Colombia, 15 from Asia, Turkey, Taiwan, and Kazakhstan, 5 from Africa, Tunisia, and 10 from Europe, Russia, Greece, and Kazakhstan, Ukraine. Sorry, I missed that one, and it was very important for us. So from all of those countries, we had, in the end, 6 people or 6 teachers completing the course. But for us, this is very important because it shows a great accomplishment. It is not an easy task, as some of my previous peers have said here. It is not an easy task to finish a course. In our case, they didn't have to design a whole course, but at least one lesson plan. But this shows us that in the end, they understood the background or the meaning behind flipped learning. So we are very thankful to Ines, to Gokce, to Elena, to Tony, to Marianne, and to Viviana in order to participate from our course. They are actually being invited to be our co-moderators next year because of the quality of the work that they presented. They had to present in the end some digital packaging, which we will show you later on. But the whole idea behind this was for them not to understand how to implement technological tools, but going beyond that to understand how was their classroom working from a learning culture perspective, from a flexible environment. Am I being given enough options to my students in my class for them to participate, for them to develop a learning culture, for them to understand that they can be ongoing learners? So for us, this was very important. Many of our attendees participate in the first 3 weeks of our course. But then they stopped when they realized that they had to make maybe an activity. And some of them reached to us that probably they needed a little bit more time to understand what was underlying behind flipped learning because they misunderstood it. So these were some of our tasks. In week number 1, they had to read about the 4 pillars that we said before: flexible environment, intentional learning culture, intentional content, and professional educator. And based on that, they had to create some visual representations of that. We're going to show you here a little bit of our showcase. This was the example. We took it from Marta Ramirez, another very important previous moderator and now author, along with Carolina Rodriguez, of their own in-class flipped learning book. We highly recommend that one. For example, we have this one from Pan. So in here, she gave us our that visual representation of what she understood of flipped learning. Now we have Viviana's visual representation. We really like this one because she could, this is the second year for her in participating in our course. So this was very important to mention because we could see a little bit more of connections in here. We have Marianne's visual representation. So some of them understood right away what was underlying behind flipped learning. And this one, of course, that I really like this metaphor, which was like flipped learning and how it looked like a racetrack, you know, where students and teacher determine the rules. And this is also very linked towards differentiated learning. In week number 2, they had to make a student variability chart. And this was because last year or in previous year, we find the content a little bit overwhelming for teachers. We wanted them to have more scaffolded activities. So in the first week, they make the visual representation, they only read, but they're not yet facing, let's say, a lesson plan or do an activity right away. But again, this is more about the philosophy behind flipped learning. In week number 3, after they have, they have introduced themselves, they have as well, they have as well read about the pillars, understand it through visual representations, understand a student variability chart. Then in week number 3, they start completing a flipped learning activity, only one activity. For us, if they can understand how to design a flipped learning activity based on Bloom's taxonomy and a format that Mike Kenteris designed for us 2 years ago, which is very complete because it doesn't only include flipped learning, but also some of the Harvard or those designed for thinking ideas about big ideas in the classroom, big concepts, then they can understand how to design a whole lesson. So in this case, they had to design only one activity, like think about it and complete a very short format that we created for them. And after that, in week number 4, they had to create a digital packaging. So we could see it in all. First, we could see the first task, which was to design a flipped learning lesson. And if you realize, they have been already through. In week number 1, it was all about flexible environment. In week number 2, they had learning culture. But for learning culture, they need to know and understand their students. So this is the reason why they had to create a student variability chart in which they could see and in which they could like go ahead of their students' perceptions and some of those students' needs and identify where or in which part of the syllabus or the curriculum they could focus their efforts more for those higher order thinking skills in their classroom. Then they go to intentional content. Then they start thinking about that, okay, what activity can I design if I understand this about my students? And in week number 4, it's not only just about creating multiple tasks with multiple, let's say, digital tools, but mastering at least one for you as a teacher and for them as students, because it can be very overwhelming if our students have to make 3 activities with 3 different digital packagings. But if they can create one, master and understand that as a routine, which is also very important in flipped learning, that construction of a routine, that construction of that learning environment and that learning culture, then they can understand how they can do your activity. So this is the reason why until week 4, they had to present for us the digital packaging. And in week number 5, since we are going towards professional educator, then what they have to do is to start going through networkings, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, in order to join that and in order for them to understand how they can join or team up with teachers around the world. And of course, keep that going on, make it something constant in their teaching practice, because you as a teacher do something wonderful with your student, but then you keep it to yourself. You don't share it with the world as we do here in these EVO teaching practices, which is amazing. And then that stays there. So we need to share it with the world because you have wonderful ideas as teachers. So let's go and share it. Let's go and talk about it. Now we're going to go to some of the showcase of outcomes and tasks of our attendees. Gabby, you can start.
Yes. Okay, here there is one example from one of the participants, Maggie Tsai, who designed a differentiated flip instruction. They had to choose the content they wanted to flip, and they should include all the elements that we presented in our sessions for differentiated an instruction. So you can see that with this display of elements, instructions, find the topic, assign roles, the time allotted for the task, the detail of what the students have to go, it's present there. So in order to foster their autonomy, okay, and guide them through the tasks. The next one. Here there is another example by Elena. That is a writing activity. The same elements are present in this differentiated flipped instruction. So you can see that all the elements presented there guide the student through the task, and the teachers assume the role of facilitators. So they are there to guide them, to help them in case they need it, okay? And the last one. And this is by Viviana Diaz. So you can see that each participant designed their differentiated flipped instructions, bear in mind their context, their students, how they will be able to manage the tasks. Next.
Okay.
And yeah, sorry, tell me. Yeah.
You are 2 minutes into Q&A time, so.
Okay.
Up a bit.
Okay, we hurry up. And in week number 4, we asked the participants to explore how they wanted to package all the flip learning activities they have designed previously in the weeks. And here, Tony decided to present and to package the activities using Google Slides. And in the next one, Ines decided to use HyperDocs. Well, we don't have time, but it was very creative how she designed the activities, how it's scaffolded the activities for, there you are, thank you. So there was a moment for engage, for explore, for explain, apply, and finally evaluate, okay? Share, reflect their activities. So they were very creative. They show an involvement in the activities and how they thought about the sequence of activities they wanted to present to their students.
It is very important that since we are modeling with example, participants decided which type of digital packaging they wanted.
Yes.
So in the session, we just made sure that they had at least 3 or 4 options to understand, just to master one. Ines was very clear. She said from the beginning, I do not understand how this works. But when we saw the sample, like what she uploaded and created, we were amazed because it meant to us that she took the time, she sat down, she designed it very carefully for her students.
Yeah. And I want to add something else because I read one of the questions. All the participants have to upload their productions in Canva. So in order to receive feedback from their colleagues, okay, and interact and discuss the different ways they choose how to package or how to design a differentiated flipped instruction. And in the, yes, Diana, go.
So this is our, we cannot show it all because we're a little bit short of time, as I understand, but we want to show you some of the feedback we received from our participants in this Jamboard. In general, it was very positive. But then as moderators, we had to be very assertive and critical about the session too. So in general, we had a very positive feedback from participants. To be honest, you couldn't have done it better. Endless thanks for the efforts and the hard work. A shout out to every single who partook in the making of the nuts and bolts of these course. There were more tech requirements. I wasn't happy with the lesson package, but then it really helped me with the tech ideas in the end. So, of course, it is very challenging because some of our participants only knew about one, but then they had to read all of these options and they understood what is also flipped learning about in terms of that, giving your students voice as well.
Thank you.
And of course, our lessons and future endeavors, because before we go on to our Q&As, so we understood that one of our main missions in flipped learning is to make teachers who enroll in our course to understand what is that main difference between flipping a class and flipping your teaching. So they understood how differentiated instruction was immersed in all of that. And of course, we are thinking about for next year how to add that artificial intelligence feature into more focus on our plans, because sometimes teachers found it a little way time demanding because flipped learning requires that.
Right.
Diana
Thank you.
and Gabriela,
Thank
I'm
you.
sorry to interrupt. We have maybe 1 minute.
We
for-
don't.
We don't.
We're
Okay.
over time.
Okay.
So thank you. Thank you so much. We don't have time for the Q&A, but we appreciate everything that you've done and the work that you put into this, and the participants, of course, the work that they put into it. So we're going on to the next
Thank you.
session.